Hi, I'm Andrew Hammer, Executive Director at the Foundation for the Study of Political Psychopathology, and I'm sitting down today with our director, Dr. Richard Koenigsberg, to discuss his scholarly work on war, Hitler, the Holocaust, and what he calls the psychopathology of normalcy. Richard has adapted to the current trend of presenting his ideas through short videos. We have a series of shorts, and today we will be discussing a short titled, The World Has Become One Body. The world has become one body. The German volk symbolized individual German human beings massed together to constitute a single body. The Nazi fantasy was that each and every human being was contained within the volk, united with each and every other German human being. One Reich, one Fuhrer, one people. Hitler did not allow for the possibility that a German human being could exist separately from the Reich body. Totalitarianism means that a nation is constituted by human beings massed together to create a single organism. Each human being is a cell of an enormous national body. I hypothesize that the internet replicates this fantasy of human beings bound together as one to constitute a single body. Each human being binds to the internet body through his or her computer or cell phone. According to this fantasy, there is not a single human being existing separately, unbound from this internet body. The world has become one.
Isn't that interesting, this connection between the two phenomenon where the whole idea of the internet is that everybody is included. Like I'm kind of a freak because I don't have a cell phone, right? And so, which is conscious. So I'm excluded from the internet body, although I'm not really, because I go on all the time, and then I become one with everybody else. So there is the fantasy that everybody else is together, united in this one body. And that's similar to totalitarianism, where in Germany, where the idea was that every single German was a part of the volk, and to be excluded from the volk was more or less a crime, although, of course, if you were found out being against it, of course, if you're sitting at a cafe and not saying anything, Hitler wouldn't know that you were skeptical about being a part of the Volk. And when you saw the rallies, that was Hitler's thrill. When all those people were saying the same thing, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, and in his mind, they were all one body.
Okay. So this is very similar to when I was watching I think it was the Chinese Olympic opening ceremonies, the precision and just the unity of the performers and that movement was just it was astonishing. And I even remember like Westerners even commented it was like something that we could probably never do here in America because of our individuality. That's what you're talking about by this one body where everyone is completely subservient to a single will.
Well, I would say the word subservient is not right because that
Okay.
would be a Western word. In their minds, I don't think anybody would dare say that they were subservient to Hitler. They would say,
Oh.
we embrace the Fuhrer as our leader, and we're honored to be willing to march to him and finally to die for him. I mean, I don't think Germans complained about all the deaths that were occurring right to the end. And if somebody raised the white flag in Berlin, when the Russians were already in Berlin, the Germans, the Nazis, whatever you want to call them, would go up and shoot the man.
Yeah.
So it lasted right to the end. The Reich and the idea, the German people did not abandon Hitler. And if you read Goebbels at the end, he's saying in 1945, he's saying things like, "We will not abandon you no matter what," that kind of thing.
Wow. That's shocking. I didn't
Yeah.
know. I didn't understand that. So yeah, so that makes sense though, because then Germany really is one body. It can't fall apart until Hitler is gone.
That's right.
Okay, and then once he was gone, there was no more Germany, and it
Well,
had to come something new.
there
It
was
became
no,
something new.
it fell apart so quickly. People that
Yeah.
came out of the bunker, and there's one lady that was one of the big assistants. She says, "Were we dreaming?" Because there was nothing there then. It was just, there was just all the ruins of Germany. Germany was ruined. There was all
Oh.
these dead people, and it was something like the Matrix, where
Mhm. Yeah.
he looking through the glasses, and Neo said, "No, I don't want to look. I don't want to look. It
Mhm.
looks like this beautiful city." And then suddenly, what did they do? Take off his glasses or something? Or
Yeah, they take him out and he like wakes up in this kind of mechanized pod, like where they're farming humans.
no,
And
I'm talking about where he sees the city as a
oh,
wreck. Where the city looks like this
yeah.
wonderful New York City, and
Yeah.
suddenly he does
Oh, yeah.
something, and he
Yeah.
says, "I don't want to look. I don't." And there's nothing there. It's like
Yeah.
ruins, just like Germany at the end of the
Yeah,
war.
yeah, because he's like looking in the computer world, which is kind of the fantasy, and it's this big, and the imagery is really well done too, because it's this big city of lights in front of him, and it looks spectacular. But then, like that's the computer kind of projected fantasy over this city, which when he takes it off, it's literally it's Germany 1945. It's
Yep.
just bombed and wrecked. And
And somehow they got everybody to buy into that fantasy, except these people that went underground, and was it in a boat or
yeah,
something?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They went
And
underground.
they were willing not to participate and to be individuals and to keep their humanity, even though it meant they were excluded and they were trying to kill them. The whole movie was trying to
Mhm.
kill people who were
Yeah.
excluded. And the
Mhm.
people in that movie show the evil. I mean, those characters that wanted so much to be part of it and hated people, those were
Yeah.
complex characters.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a very complex movie. I haven't seen the latest one or fully digested yet, but I would like to see that too. That makes it. I think that makes a lot of sense. So this one body, this came from the idea of Leviathan, didn't it?
From where?
Did this come from the idea of the Leviathan? I think it was Hobbes, who was the theorist who had the book called Leviathan, and it's the picture of, I think it's even the king. It's like the picture of the guy with the crown, and he's got all the bodies inside of him.
Yeah, and now if you tell people that, they don't even get that. I mean, the king's body, and that's a very good free association, was consisted of all these little men. It was right there. That fantasy of the Leviathan, the state, is all the individuals bound to the body of the king. And Hobbes was writing in what, the 16th century.
Yeah.
So this is not a new fantasy of every being bound into one. And it's now, I don't know about the people in this neighborhood. I don't know if who are Spanish, they're probably bound to their families. So they don't have this great nationalistic fantasy. But when you have individuality, you also have this other dialectical fantasy of wanting to do away with individuality to be a part of the masses. And that's where Manhattan is kind of unique, because there's so many people that are just pursuing their own lives and their own careers that are not part of the masses. Although nowadays, I don't know what Trump is trying to reintegrate this whole idea that you can't be separate from the country.
Okay.
That's what totalitarianism means, total, that everybody is united with the country, and there can be no such thing as an individual who is on his own, a complete unknown, like a Rolling Stone. And that's what Bobby Dylan's song, the most famous song of the 20th century, And that's when that American individualism was at its height. You know, we don't want to be part of the system. And there was something tragic about that. How does it feel to be on your own, a complete unknown, like a Rolling Stone?
That's really interesting. I think that seems to explain a lot of why we are where we are now, with people feeling like the country doesn't exist and that we don't have a body anymore.
And we're not united.
Yeah.
And all the foreigners coming in, you know,
Hmm.
that they're strange. I mean, it's not that they're really doing anything wrong. It's that they're so different from us. I go over, you know, the one reason I don't go out that much is because I go over to the park, which you've seen, right, next to my
Yeah.
apartment. And these people are talking a different language, and I feel no feeling of fellow brother. You know, what was that song? Marvin Gaye in 1971.
Oh, that's before my time.
War
I'm
is
sorry.
not the answer. You know,
Oh,
I don't feel any brotherly spirit. Sometimes I'm desperate and I try to get into conversation with somebody, and they can barely speak English and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
So yeah, okay. So this need for to be one, I think you call it also symbiosis. You call it symbiosis. Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. So that's almost a form of anxiety we experience in our culture, where we have this certain need to be unified around one thing, but we have our individuality that's kind of pushing us apart, and that's what
Well,
makes us unique.
pushing us apart, but the goal of individuality is not to be pushed apart, but to be yourself.
Mm.
For you to be Hammer, just Hammer,
Hmm.
and not all
Yeah,
the
to not be
rednecks in
America.
your neighborhood. Now, this Nancy Coburn that just wrote to me, the first person that wants to do this kind of thing, she's in Israel and she's fanatic writing about symbiosis and individuality. And she says in Muslim, the Muslim ideal is that there's no, and she traces it back to the infantile symbiosis. She says that the mother is not allowed to be separate from the family, and the child grows up in submission to the family. And that's why, and she's fanatic in the way she writes about it. You know, she says that's why they're in such trouble, and that's why they hate the Israelites, because Israel has the idea of the individual, and they're in a fight to the death now. I mean, I read about it occasionally, but they're in a fight to the death.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
she talks about the maternal symbiosis. So symbiosis is a normal part of human development, according to Margaret Mahler. But there's also separation, individuation. So you grow out of the symbiosis and you grow into a separate individual. But I'm skeptical. I think everybody in some way maintains that symbiotic delusion of oneness with other human beings.
okay. So really, it's not to being able to correctly manage that, and like your society. So if the society spirals off to either they need to be they need to be completely disconnected from each other, or if they spiral, then they just devolve into chaos and civil war, etc. But if they go the other direction, we need to all be one, they start to drift to totalitarianism. And is that what you mean by the psychopathology of normalcy, where as a society it seems normal because everyone wants, like, it didn't sound like the Germans were upset about being a totalitarian society. It seemed like they were like, yeah, this is great. We're Germans. We're all one. That one big happy family.
Yeah,
So, and
Hitler was happy.
yeah,
He's never happier. That's why they had those rallies once a year. He lived for those rallies because he wanted to see the oneness embodied. It wasn't enough to have an abstract idea of oneness, which he called, and the opposite of that was Zersetzung. He used this word Zersetzung, which translates as disintegration, which is, the death instinct.
Yeah.
It means falling apart. And he couldn't bear that idea of Zersetzung. And so his greatest dream, which he had to reproduce every year, was the Nuremberg rallies, where his fantasy became embodied with all people raising their hand in unison. And it seemed like they were all, in his mind, they were all one people, one Reich, one Fuhrer.
And he could see it all in front of him. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the discussion, Richard.
Okay. Thank you for instigating the discussion.
Yeah, we'll continue this with other shorts, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. Take care.
Thank you so much.